always done it. And it hasn't worked.
Immediately froze the computer as we hit record.
So we don't know what we're doing. We've forgotten how to do this. And so's the equipment, because it's been so long.
It's been a minute. Welcome back to the Generally Spooky History Podcast. We do the deep dives into Scottish history and its spooky goings-on.
There's a lot of them.
There is.
We've learned.
That is Eilidh over there. She will be leading us through today's story.
And that's Kieran.
He's just Ken.
That's right. The Barbie movie came out since we recorded last, I think. I don't even remember.
I don't think so.
Yeah, we've been gone a while.
Yeah. But it feels nice to be back.
You guys can join us and remind us how this is supposed to work.
Mm-hmm.
We can take this journey into the unknown together. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much. Yeah. We've been away a little while, but we're excited to be back and bring you some more spooky goings on.
We are going to finish season 6.
Yes, we are.
Fate has done everything in its power to try and make sure that the rest of this season does not air. But we say no.
We say, up yours, fate. We have a podcast to produce.
No, you can't say that. You've just made everything so much worse.
What? How?
You can't say up yours, fate.
Why not?
Have you read any story ever?
No.
It shows.
That's why you're leading us through the story today.
It shows. Oh, everyone who's superstitious right now will be cringing at the fact you just said that.
Mm. I bet they'll be hungry. I bet he whistles on ships too.
Opens umbrellas inside. Smashes mirrors just for the hell of it.
Because I'm crazy. But it's nice to be back in the hot seat for a main episode.
Back on the airwaves.
Mm-hmm.
Terrorizing everybody.
That's us.
You see our name pop up and you go, aw.
That'd be the most disappointing review ever.
Aw.
Ah, really? That's a shame.
You're still doing that, are you?
Ugh. Really? Oh.
Start with the Scottish. Apparently, this Christmas I learned that all of my friends seem to think I say that a lot. I got a pin for Christmas that says, ugh.
Yes, you did. Because they listened to the podcast.
And I never clocked that I said it ever.
No, me neither.
And now I'm hyper aware of the fact that I do seem to say it a lot of the time.
You're an ugh-er.
Ugh.
Yeah, that does sound familiar, doesn't it? Shall we roll some music and get into today's story?
I mean, if you still have it.
Oh, there's a question.
Can you find it?
I hope so. Is it playing just now? If it's not, I fucked up.
I can't hear it.
If it is, we'll see you in 15 seconds or so.
Has it been 15 seconds? Did it play? We don't know.
We don't know.
Nothing stopped for us. Although we do take our ceremonial pause for the imaginary music to play.
You have to. You have to. So what are you telling us about today?
Well, it's kind of a biggie this week.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go big rather than go home.
Oh, that's good.
Because I've been at home and now I want to go big. So
Fair play.
Today we're talking about a major figure from Scottish history.
Okay.
Rather than just a place.
Mm-hmm.
This week, we're talking about Rob Roy.
Oh, the man, the myth, the legend.
Mm-hmm. We're talking about Rob Roy. I'm assuming by your reaction that you have heard of Rob Roy before, Kieran.
I have heard of him, but only being referenced in other things, such as Ur Willie, the comic. But it's not anyone I know much about, other than he's a sort of Scottish hero figure, very William Wallace-esque. Although I don't know if Rob Roy was real. I'm going to find out, hopefully.
Interesting. So you are perfectly primed to have the truth revealed about Rob Roy, aren't you? He's this shrouded, mysterious figure, and you don't even know if he's real.
Oh, I thought I was the shrouded, mysterious figure. No.
You're a lot of things, but mysterious is not one of them. I'm sorry. I hate to tell you. Like an open book.
What are you going to do?
Read ya, baby.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, this week we are talking about Rob Roy.
Exciting.
Now, if you're listening to this, there's a chance that you know who Rob Roy was, or that you know some of the story. There was a movie made about Rob Roy in the 90s. I don't know if you knew this, Kieran.
Nope.
Liam Neeson played Rob Roy.
Wow.
And they did actually film it all in Scotland.
Oh, well, that's a step in the right direction.
Which doesn't always happen.
No.
It's more than can be said for Braveheart, which I hate.
Which was filmed in Ireland?
Yeah, it was all filmed, according to Wikipedia, within a 30-mile radius of Dublin. And Mel Gibson played the leading role.
Yeah.
So Liam Neeson is an Irish actor, but it's closer.
We're getting closer to home.
So there's a chance if you've seen the movie, you might know a little bit of Rob Roy's story. It was a pretty big one from what I saw.
Mm-hmm. I like Liam Neeson. I would watch that.
Maybe we should.
Not instead of doing this right now, just in general.
Yeah, I'm actually just going to do this myself. Kieran's going to go and watch the TV that's in the same room and watch Rob Roy. But we're going to have to like bleep it all out because it'll all be copyright.
It's going to be a fun day.
Well, kind of like you alluded to, there's a lot of romanticism and myth surrounding Rob Roy.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of become bigger than himself as the years have gone on. He's kind of known as the Scottish Robin Hood.
Okay.
Closer to that than another William Wallace.
Mm-hmm.
Their stories are different. He's the romantic hero outlaw.
Okay.
That's what he's become.
I imagine a Scottish Robin Hood takes from the poor and just keeps it.
What makes you say that, Kieran?
Just a general reputation, you know?
And I would say that this has been the result of a process that's taken 300 years to get through. But his life became exaggerated beyond himself within his own lifetime.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Damn, that's not easy.
So his legend surpassed him while he was still living.
Oh.
Which doesn't always happen.
No, because I'm assuming this is going to be at least hundreds of years ago, if not more than 1,000 years. So it's usually in that length of time that these figures become bigger than themselves.
Right? No, he was a legend before he died.
He was a living legend.
Yeah, literally.
Damn.
So we are going back to 1671.
Okay.
It's not thousands of years.
No.
About 400 or so. Robert McGregor, which was his actual name, was born on the 7th of March, 1671.
Okay.
To his parents, Donald McGregor and Margaret Campbell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was born near Loch Katrine, which is northwest of Stirling.
Okay.
Between Dumbarton, Callander and Crianlarich, if we keep things simple.
Yeah.
That area. I read conflicting reports about Rob's father. I'm not 100% certain on who he was and what he did, because different sources say different things. According to some sources, he was a clan chief. In others, he was the clan chief's brother, the chief's taxman, which basically means a landlord's top tenant,
Okay.
who then sublets to other tenants.
Ah.
So the chief's lead tenant.
Mm-hmm.
It was also reported that he was lieutenant colonel in the army.
Okay.
So whichever one is true, important guy.
Yeah, a high Hegian, just varying levels of high.
And I'm inclined to believe the lieutenant colonel rank for reasons we'll get into later on.
Okay.
That seems like it could be legit.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, this is an amateur historian, not a professional. I have no qualifications.
But you're here doing it anyway.
I'm here doing it anyway.
No one tries harder.
It's often said that Rob inherited his strength, which he was known for, and maybe even his super long arms, which he was also known for.
Interesting.
From his father. But the reason for his well-known nickname, Rob Roy, is because of his red hair.
Oh. What means red in Rob or Rob?
Rua is red in Gaelic.
Okay.
So it's been anglicised over time to become Roy instead of Rua.
Oh, interesting.
And that's Ruadh. I'm probably saying it wrong, so you can let me know. That's fine, because I would like to learn. So, Rob Rua.
Ah, I see.
Rob Roy.
Interesting.
And it's said that he inherited his red hair from his mother, Mary.
Got you. Sounds good to me.
Clan MacGregor claimed to be descended from Kenneth MacAlpin, who is widely considered to be Scotland's first king.
I thought it sounded familiar.
We have talked about him sort of glancingly in other episodes.
Kenneth MacAlpin. So that was rumoured to be his ancestor.
Yeah, so the whole clan claim that he's their shared ancestor. They're all descended from Kenneth MacAlpin.
I imagine a lot of people make that claim.
Yeah, well, Scotland's not a big place.
No.
I think we've talked about it before, that you could throw a stone and someone will be related to the Bruce or whoever.
I'm on the Bruce.
If I am, anyone can be. But despite the royal connection, Clan MacGregor haven't had an easy time of things in the space between Kenneth MacAlpin and now.
Yes.
You say that like you know what I'm going to say, and I know you don't. You look like you were about to take over and you were gonna tell me about Clan MacGregor.
Let me mansplain everything you just said.
Actually, I know this better. I'm gonna take over.
Yeah, I'm more of a Kenneth McBran guy myself.
That was bad.
Thank you.
But you were back on top form. Do you want to tell me about Clan MacGregor, or would you like me to continue?
I think you should probably take over.
You're going to give me this one?
Yeah. I know, but you say it first, and then I'll say if I also knew.
Well, yeah, then you'll argue with me that I don't know enough.
Yeah. And another thing.
I actually read on Reddit that that's not the case. The name MacGregor, so that's M-A-C Gregor, has been proscribed several times throughout history.
What does that mean?
Well, this is a term that I didn't know either before coming into this episode. I wasn't really clear on what it meant. When the name MacGregor was proscribed, it basically meant that having the name MacGregor was illegal.
Oh.
You weren't allowed to go by MacGregor.
Oh, damn.
You couldn't sign any legal documents under the name MacGregor. It's a pretty crippling but very effective way to wipe out a clan.
Yeah. What do you do? It's your name. Just pick a different name.
Yeah, literally, yeah. You go by a different name.
Damn.
It's a very extreme punishment, and it's something that was handed down as a punishment. You might be thinking it's a bit too extreme. It kind of is and it kind of isn't in this case.
To have happened multiple times.
Yeah. In 1603, even before this, there were some instances where there was reasons for proscription. But in 1603, Clan MacGregor mounted an attack on Clan Colquhoun, Colquhoun,
Colquhoun.
at Glenfruin, which is near Helensburgh, northwest of Glasgow.
Thank you.
West coast, basically. There were several reasons for this attack. One was that relations between the two clans hadn't been great anyway, because the MacGregors had been raiding Colquhoun land, and the Colquhouns were fed up of it, as you'd expect.
Valid. So
they were coming to blows fairly often. We're also going to be touching on raiding again later this episode, so keep that in mind. But it seems that the MacGregors were kind of prodded into raiding the Colquhouns by Archibald Campbell.
Name sounds familiar.
He was the 7th Earl of Argyll. We've talked about him pretty much at length before. He was Archibald the Grim.
Oh, okay.
Who went to battle against the Earls of Huntly and Errol with his commission of fire and sword.
Yep.
The Battle of Glenlivet. Now, he was a teenager at the time, wildly underprepared, betrayed by some of his own men in this battle. But don't worry if you don't remember. It doesn't really matter for our story. This was in 1594 when he was only 19.
54. Yep.
This Archibald, who would have been 28 by 1603 when we're talking about him, had been charged by his higher-ups with making sure the MacGregors didn't cause any trouble. And there were various clauses and promises and deals made with the higher-ups, which we don't need to get into, but it basically benefited him to rile the MacGregors up instead of calming them down.
Oh, okay.
Against the Colquhouns, because their chief was one of his rivals.
I see.
So he's being sneaky.
Yep.
Because the MacGregors will get the blame.
Smart.
Now, the Colquhouns had the support of King James VI, who was on the throne at the time. Dickhead.
Boo.
They told on the MacGregors to the king, and the king was like, stop it. Don't do that.
Ain't that just like the king?
Don't do that. Okay, he didn't say it like that. But he did give the Colquhouns permission to carry weapons, even though no one else was allowed to do this at the time.
Interesting. So the McGregors are being riled up to attack the Colquhouns,
Yes.
but the Colquhouns are allowed to carry weapons.
Yes.
Mm.
So you can see things are kind of coming to a head.
Yes.
Things are bubbling.
Things are coming to a beheading, I think.
Well, this annoyed the McGregors even more, seeing that they were allowed to carry weapons and they weren't allowed to defend themselves. This is a rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
Why do they get to do that? We should be allowed to do that. They're attacking us. But King James was like, no.
Actually, no. I'm in England now, so I don't really care.
I forgot you guys existed. Oh my god.
I forgot that you existed.
When was the Union of the Crowns?
I'm not sure. He
Might
may
have been in 1603, actually. 1607? It was around there. Elizabeth I died in 1603. So it was that year.
Hmm.
So yeah, he had way more shit going on. I never put that together, honey. Good spot.
I'm just so historically knowledged.
Oh yeah.
In my brain.
Mm-hmm. That's what you've been doing the past 6 months.
How impressed would you be if I'd just been studying Scottish history?
I'd be impressed because we live together. For those who don't know, we are in fact a married couple.
Oh my god. I thought we were secret.
Secretly married. No. I would be very impressed if you were having this completely secret double life in the house.
Moonlighting as a Scottish historian.
In our bungalow. There aren't that many rooms, Kieran.
No.
So there's more back and forthing between the clans. They're continuing to attack each other. It's not good. Various historians over the years have taken one side or the other, saying one clan is at fault, the other was actually at fault. It seems to go between.
It seems so arbitrary. 300 years later, 350 years later.
Well, even more modern times, there are some historians who say that the Colquhouns were the aggressors, provoking the McGregors, but other historians say that the McGregors were the bad guys. I think they both had a part to play.
Yeah.
Is what I'm happy saying.
It's never black and white, is it?
No.
No.
There was a raid in 1602 where the McGregors lifted a hell of a lot of livestock from Colquhoun land.
Yep.
300 cows, 100 horses and mares, 400 sheep, and 400 goats.
Just logistically, that is impressive.
Mm-hmm.
That's a coordinated theft right there.
Mm-hmm. Which we're going to talk about later.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not a small raid. You're going to notice if all of that is suddenly gone.
You're going to wake up and it's suddenly very, very quiet and you're wondering why.
Mm-hmm. And livestock was a major source of income.
Yeah.
Like Scotland's economy thrived on livestock.
Mm-hmm.
So having all of that gone is a very big deal.
Yes.
This raid enraged the Colquhouns even more because they had their stuff stolen. They complained to the king, got more rights to exercise power over the McGregors.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
The McGregors get even more upset.
Well, just because we took all your animals, you think you're going to be mad? Yes. Yes, we are.
But all of this takes us to 1603 and the raid that I told you happened that year. A force of somewhere between 300 and 400 McGregors marched into Colquhoun lands. Remember I mentioned Glenfruin. And they met the Colquhoun force of around 300 horse and 500 foot, according to sources.
Okay.
The McGregors basically trapped the Colquhouns in the glen. Some of them were in front, some were behind, and ultimately the Colquhouns lost because they were completely hemmed in.
Yeah.
Between 140 and 200 men were killed. Almost half.
Not good.
And it's reported that only 2 McGregors were killed in the battle.
Oh, that's either a really good effort or absolutely tragic, depending who you're rooting for.
Yeah.
Yeesh.
Reads like a slaughter.
Yes.
But this is a very dramatic case of winning the battle, but absolutely losing the war.
I'm always surprised how often someone goes into a glen, you know, a nice steep-sided valley, for those who can't picture it.
And those who did geography, like Kieran did. Very passionate about steep-sided glens and valleys.
Love a U-shaped valley, me. And they end up being surrounded and trapped. I'm like, how do you keep letting this happen? Just throughout history. It seems to happen over and over again.
I don't think they let it happen.
Well, how does it keep happening?
By accident.
Yeah, just
good planning on the other side. I don't think anyone has decided, all right, let's give in. Let's just enter the valley of death.
Maybe they were all really cranky because their cows got stolen, so they didn't get their milk in the morning. So they weren't thinking straight. I'd like to put that forward to the committee for consideration.
I'm waiting for the punchline.
There isn't one. There was one.
Because the Battle of Killiecrankie happened in a steep glen.
Oh.
I thought that's what you were talking about.
No. I'm not that smart.
Oh my god! Killiecrankie. We're going to talk about it later this episode.
Oh man, I've used my joke early.
Guys, pretend he didn't say it, okay? He's going to say it again later, and he's going to do it right next time. So you have to laugh the second time, okay? Just pretend he didn't say it.
I've not had my milk today. I'm all grumpy.
He didn't say it.
There we go. It's fine now. Please continue.
So King James was already having kind of a tough time with the Highlanders by this point, because they didn't recognise him as king in the way he wanted. We've talked about this before, that Highlanders typically have always been so far removed. They don't see a king down in London or even a king down in Edinburgh historically as their king. They have their own way of doing things. They have their own heritage. They don't respect the king always in the same way.
Yep.
King James wanted to bring them in line because he wanted to be the authority. So he felt that punishing Clan MacGregor would be a good tactic for doing that. Because it would show him coming down on a Highland clan, show that he's not to be messed with.
Yeah.
And he was hoping it would kind of bring them to heel.
He's trying to look cool in front of everyone down in England.
Yeah, basically. And he came down on them really hard as a result of that culture and that thinking.
So is this them getting prescribed?
Yes, he was the one that prescribed the name MacGregor.
Okay.
And he executed their clan chief.
Ooh. A hefty measure.
Yeah.
So is that proscribed?
Yeah, proscribed. Proscribed. Prescribed is when you get medication.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
Prescription seemed pretty terrible. From some of the things I read that prescription allowed to happen. People in Scotland were openly allowed to hunt and kill MacGregors as if they were animals.
Oh my god. That seems extreme.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Really bad. You were just allowed to do that.
Jesus.
The law wouldn't protect them.
Oh. That seems steep.
Yeah.
Steeper than the side of a glen.
Which you know about.
The
prescription was lifted in 1661, but was put back in place in 1689 because the MacGregors went up against the rule of William of Orange when he came to town. They supported the Stuarts historically, which seems like madness because it was the Stuarts that outlawed their name.
Yes.
James Stuart VI. They still supported the Stuarts even when William of Orange came in and Queen Mary and they took on the throne. And the MacGregors fought at Killiecrankie in 1689.
Oh, okay. Oh, do you think they were cranky because they didn't get their milk?
That was so bad. Bravo.
Thank you. Some leather notes.
You're not just writing down your jokes?
I might do that.
So you can frame them.
I have a note on here that just says pickled onion crisps. Must be a shopping list.
They're important. We should have some.
Rob Roy.
That is who we're talking about, yes. So we haven't done an episode on Killiecrankie yet.
Nope.
I'm sure we'll get there at some point. It's one of the major battles in Scottish history, but I'll give you the highlights here, just give you what's relevant to our story. The year before the battle happened, in 1688, King James VII fled the country because that's when William and Mary came to take over the throne. They were invited to come and take it because they were Protestant.
Okay.
Which we've talked about.
Yes.
Yeah, it was just kind of handed to them. Viscount Dundee and Cameron of Lochiel led the Jacobite Rising of 1689. So that was the first one. It wasn't just the Rising that had Culloden in it. There were 3 major ones. The Rising had been going well, but Dundee was killed at Killiecrankie, and he was one of the leaders of the Rising. So, huge spanner in the works. They're down a leader. The Jacobites won this battle, which is always surprising to hear.
Good effort. Yeah, they didn't do that hugely often.
But they didn't really press their advantage following the victory. They didn't take advantage of it. So they kind of lost steam.
Yes.
Which is why the Rising didn't work.
Yep, that's another common theme with the Jacobites, I think, isn't it?
It's to do with disorganisation from what I've read. Back to our story today, though. Rob and his father fought at Killiecrankie
Hmm.
because the McGregors fought at Killiecrankie.
Yes.
Rob was only 18 at the time.
Oh, intense.
Which it's scary to think about.
I can't imagine going into battle at 18.
Mm.
It's kind of a lot.
They both survived the battle, but his father, Donald, was captured by the government forces afterwards. He was charged with high treason and held prisoner following the battle for 2 years in Edinburgh.
Oh, that's a long time.
But surprisingly, from what I've seen before, he was released.
Oh.
And he left with his head.
That's more impressive.
We don't talk about that very much.
No. So is this the person you thought was Lance Corporal?
Lieutenant Colonel, yes.
Yes.
And this is why I think he may have had a military background.
Mm-hmm.
Because he fought in this battle.
Well,
and he survived.
Yeah, if he was worthy enough to keep prisoner for that long.
Without executing him straight away.
Yeah. And even that it was noted that he was taken prisoner. Not just it was suspected he was one of several hundred prisoners kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems fair.
Donald being captured wasn't good for Rob's family, who were still at home while he was taken there to Edinburgh. They had to make money, which was harder after Killiecrankie, and prescription was brought back.
Oh.
Like I said, so it's now illegal to be a McGregor again.
Yep, no matter how long your arms are.
Yeah. Now, Rob had been born in 1671.
Yes.
Like I opened with, which was between periods of prescription, which is why he was allowed to be christened Robert McGregor.
Ah, I see.
Because when prescription happens, you're not allowed to do that. You can't christen children with that name.
No.
So after Killiecrankie, prescription comes back, he started going by Robert Campbell.
Okay.
Campbell was his mother's maiden name.
Yep, that makes sense. But
even changing his name, it was difficult to get by with the reputation of being a McGregor.
Yeah.
Because everyone knew who he was.
There's pretty small communities in Scotland, even now, and back then.
He struck a pretty recognisable figure. He was very big, very strong, bright red hair. You know who he is.
Yeah.
He's not going to hide himself that well.
And in my head, his arms just keep getting longer, so... Gonna turn into Slender Man.
So, what does Rob do, Kieran?
What skills does a ginger Scottish Slender Man have? He goes into banditry.
That's a good guess.
Yeah?
Yeah, really well done. More specifically, Rob turned to blackmail.
Okay.
Which is different to what you're imagining in your head right now, I bet. So let me explain. At this time, blackmail wasn't really blackmail like we understand it. Not quite. But I think it's where the term comes from.
Okay.
A good portion of Scotland's economy and the likelihood of survival of your standard Highland family depended on the rearing and trading of cattle.
Yes.
And cattle specifically. There was really good money in cows.
Okay.
You might pay your rent to your clan chief in cows.
Damn.
Rather than gold.
That's funny because this summer past, we spent quite a long time trying to find some Highland cows to show my cousin's wife because she's from Germany and wanted to see some. Couldn't find them anywhere. Checked all the main places we usually see them around here. Couldn't find them. And we looked up online and there's just not as much money in Highland cows as there are other types of cow. So people tend not to raise them.
Well, at this time, there was this very specific cow that was worth a lot of money, which I'll explain.
Was it steering the market?
Oh. See, it said it again. In order to sell all of these cattle, they had to be transported across the country to where the markets were, which usually entailed taking them from the north, which is where all their pastures were in the Highlands, down south to places like Crieff, Falkirk, Dumfries, and later even London.
Yeah. Oh, that's a long walk from the Highlands to London to sell your cows.
It took a while for the cattle trade to really work between Scotland and England because of all the civil war.
Well, that would put a damper on things, wouldn't it?
So it was over a long time this developed and became a thriving trade. But it was thriving in Scotland.
Yes.
At this time. People eventually were taking cattle further and further. Where are we? Lost myself.
Was it in my eyes?
No. It was big business. I read that at one point, quote, at least 30,000 head of cattle passed over the border each year.
Damn.
Unquote.
That's insane.
Now, listen to this. Quote, the total number of cattle in Scotland in early times is not known, but the Exchequer rolls for 1378 show the number of hides exported as being nearly 45,000. By the end of the 16th century, the beginnings of a well-organised trade in cattle began, which involved the movement of large numbers annually from the distant pastures to the main markets in central Scotland, and from there to England. This trade in cattle persisted into the 19th century. In 1777, 90,000 head were sold in Falkirk. And by 1850, this had risen to 150,000 per annum.
Oh, that's insane.
That's a lot of cows.
That's a lot of cows.
And I got all of this from scottishhighlandcattle.com.au. But they took their information from the Macaulay Land Use Research Institute.
That's funny. It's funny it's an Australian website.
Yeah. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
That kind of numbers.
Crazy.
So it's big money.
Big business. Big cows. Big cows gonna get you.
Now, you've already alluded to it, Kieran, but you've probably had the thought that this time it wasn't big lorries taking these cattle from A to B.
No.
Rob Roy was around in the late 1600s, early 1700s. You can't really take them down the M6.
Nope.
Which is why cattle drovers existed.
Yes.
Cattle drovers were the ones that would take the cattle to the markets that they were to be sold at. Sometimes they were shifting their own cattle. Other times they were paid by wealthy cattle owners to take their cattle to market for them.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So sometimes they owned them, sometimes they didn't. Sometimes they were being paid. They were typically men, from what I've seen. Although I've not seen anything that says this was a hard and fast rule. It's just based on the information I've seen. They were really experts in their field. Pun intended. They knew what they were doing, and to be a drover, you had to have a pretty huge wealth of knowledge.
Well, to know where you're going and then to not lose any cows, because how do you keep cows going in one direction? 300 miles.
Right? They had to be so good at all these different things I didn't even consider before doing my research for the episode. Like, obviously, they had to know the route. So you have to know the land really well, where the rivers are, the unpassable places are where you can't take cattle, the safe paths through the mountains, the glens, avoiding bogs, things like that.
Cattle grids.
There were no cattle grids. Most roads at the time were just rough tracks.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, these weren't even passable by horse and cart.
I imagine to a point, the road would be made by the cattle.
Yeah. Most of the time, these roads were used by pack horses and travellers on foot. Because you couldn't take anything bigger over them. The main drove roads ended up being quite wide because they were worn away by the passing of thousands of animals.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
In fact, I read that what is now the A9 probably started out as a drove road.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Which I think is fun.
Yeah, that's the main thoroughfare from Perth to all the way up to Wick, I think, the A9, through Inverness.
All the way up north. But the drovers, they had to know the route, but they also had to know a lot about the animals themselves to take care of them, to make sure they got to market safely. Part of that was knowing which pace was just right for getting them to the market on time, but also arriving at market with the cattle at the optimum weight. Because if you rushed it and you drove them too hard, too fast, the cattle would get to the market and they're like 2/3 the weight they were when they left.
Skin and bone.
Which aren't going to sell as well.
No.
So it was a really delicate balance.
Oh, that's tricky. Because you wouldn't want them passing out from exhaustion either.
They have to be in good health by the time you get them there.
Yeah, so you need to know where to stop and graze them. Oh my God. So much knowledge.
And these journeys were intense. Drovers were away for long stretches of time.
You would be.
Even at the time that they were operating, drovers kind of became romantic figures because they were one with the wild and one with the land. The site I mentioned before quoted a source from the time that described drovers, and it said they were, quote, great stalwart hirsute men, shaggy and uncultured and wild, who look like bears as they lounge heavily along.
Oh,
unquote.
wow, that's so far from being how you could describe me, but I want it to be how you describe me.
Like a bear.
Yeah. I'm more like a beanpole.
But you can really get a sense for the romantic image
Yes.
of these drover types.
It makes so much sense to me, because if you're in your little village and you're going to stay there from when you're born to when you die, and you might not leave particularly far away, to hear of someone who's off in the trails and exploring across the country, even going to major cities or towns and things, that would be enchanting.
And doing it alone.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Right up until you smelled them, then it would all get shattered.
So what? It's just me by myself. I don't have to smell nice. Drovers were also some of the only people in the Highlands who were allowed to bear arms.
Oh.
After it was outlawed for everyone else after Culloden,
Mm-hmm.
they were some of the only people where their job was deemed so dangerous that it was acceptable for them to carry weapons still
Wow.
because they needed them.
Well, you'd even need them for like wolves and things,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? Maybe bears? Did we have bears back then? Have we ever had bears?
No wolves.
Wolves.
For a time.
No bears.
Even in 1600s, I'm not sure if
No.
wolves were still around then.
But wild men were.
Well, I'm going to talk to you about the wild men. From what I've seen, drovers made these kind of trips once or twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't on constant rotation. They'd make the trip sort of May, June time and October.
Mm.
There's a lot more to droving. I don't have time to get to it all. It's definitely worth looking into if you're interested. There's lots of nuance and lots of information out there, which surprised me. But I told you that Rob Roy turned to blackmail.
I was wondering when we're going back to blackmail.
What does this have to do with cattle droving?
So, were you asking or?
I wasn't really, but you look excited, so I'm going to let this play out.
I'm assuming he stops them and it's a you can pass if you pay me kind of thing. Or maybe because they sell all their cows, presumably they then get given all the money or some sort of check of the time to take home again. And is he there being like, cough it up, me?
He's not a pirate.
He's a cut, Pat. So he's there saying, here, Pat, here's your money. And that's where the smell comes from. It's cow pat. That's it. That's all I've got.
You're getting warmed up. It's
Yeah.
okay.
That's my 2 minutes. Thank you, everyone. I've been Kieran. See you later.
I briefly mentioned earlier when we were talking about Highland cows that there was a specific type of cow that was very profitable.
Yes.
In Scotland at the time. They everything about them was ideal for selling and rearing cattle. They gave good meat, good milk, and they were built for rough terrain and terrible weather.
Oh, okay. They're ideal.
They were really sturdy and they could move around rugged terrain very well. So good for droving, good for general living.
Yes. Were these black cows?
They were black cows, usually. They're an ancestor of Highland cows today.
Oh, okay.
But they looked a little bit different, as you'd expect. But yes, they were usually black. Cattle drovers moving all of these black cows were vulnerable to attacks from thieves who knew where the drove roads were.
Yeah.
And knew when the markets were happening.
Yeah.
Reavers.
Back to reavers.
And this was extremely common, having these kind of attacks happen. They were even expected. It would definitely happen. You just had to kind of be ready for it.
Deal with it.
Especially if you're being paid by someone to move their cattle.
Well, yeah.
From what I've read, if you were droving, you were going to be attacked by thieves. But did you know that Highland morals at the time basically went along the lines of stealing cattle is fine?
Okay.
There's stealing, but stealing cattle isn't really stealing.
That's not the same.
It was just the done thing. Everyone did it.
Well, it does seem to happen a lot, doesn't it?
This is why. It was fine to steal cattle from someone, but not stealing other things from different clans.
I mean, you've got to have your morals, don't you?
It was fine. One explanation I saw was that according to Highland morality and Highland belief, cattle were communal property.
Oh, okay.
So they never really belonged to anyone. they belonged to everyone. So
Whoa.
you could take them.
I bet the person who owned it would disagree.
Yeah. Yeah.
Communal ownership always comes from the person with the least, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. But, this is a difficult way of looking at things if you're the one trying to make money from them.
Mm-hmm.
Enter Rob Roy. He and his men partook in the stealing of these cattle on the drove roads. They were thieves. But they played both sides of the coin.
Oh, okay.
Because they also took money in exchange for protection of cattle.
Ah. Smart.
So, unless you want your cows stolen, you better pay me what I want. And I'll make sure your cows don't get stolen.
Yeah.
But if you don't pay me...
Fair game.
It's the damnedest thing. They're just going to disappear. You know what that sounds like?
Mm-hmm.
Blackmail.
Oh my God. I can just think of American Gangster and like other gangster movies. Yeah. That's always it. I gotta pay for my protection. I gotta get my cut. Otherwise, I'll do you in. Pal.
That's definitely how gangsters speak.
Yeah, I'm a gangster, me.
They are just as threatening as you were.
Ow.
But that's why it's called blackmail. It's called blackmail after the cows.
That's interesting.
And people didn't view it the way we would view blackmail today.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of saw it as like a tax.
Yeah.
On moving their cattle and selling their cattle, an inevitable cost. You're going to have to pay someone to make sure they didn't get stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how Rob made money, following his father being imprisoned.
Well, there you go.
And he did pretty well out of it.
Gotta make a living somehow.
He was good at it. He made a lot of money. He'd blackmail neighbouring landowners and cattle owners he'd blackmail his neighbours, people who own the land and own the cattle. He'd protect their livestock for them and make a mint doing it. Because if not, he would just steal the cows.
You just steal the cows and then sell the cows. It's a good business plan right there. It's not dissimilar to when merchant ships are in certain parts of the world and they get an allowance for bribes. Because...
yeah, it's a similar idea.
Bribes are the done thing. There's part of it. So they just allocate it into their budget. Kind of similar to that.
Absolutely. Over time, Rob started accruing more and more money. He had wealth. He ended up with land of his own. He even started trading in cattle himself.
I was about to say, he's going to buy his own cows and then someone's going to start to steal them.
Yep. He got himself into the business that he had exploited for years. And was making even more money.
Very good, very good. So he is steal from the poor and then keep it.
Yeah.
So far.
Stealing from the poor? Stealing from the people who own all the cows?
Stealing
I don't think so.
From the moderately wealthy to become wealthy. That's how everyone else does it, I think.
He also got married a few years after Killiecrankie. Already the romantic rogue. He married his cousin. Standard fare. Marie McGregor. I've also read that her name was Mary Helen McGregor.
Okay.
Which I thought was funny, because that's your mum and your granny's names.
Oh, yeah. That is funny.
But he married Marie on the 1st of January, 1693.
Oh.
When he was 22. I don't know how old she was, because why do we keep records about women?
Oh, that doesn't
women.
Matter.
Ew.
Gross. Just make the babies, am I right?
God, why would we bother writing down anything about his wife?
About the women. We got her name. That's more than we sometimes get.
Tell me about it. They also had 4 sons over the years. James Moore, Ranald, Call, and Robin Oig. We'll talk more about them later.
Okay.
But they went on to help Rob in the family business.
Of the rearing the cows or the stealing the cows?
Rearing the cows and selling the cows.
Yes.
In 1701, he bought land at Balquhidder, which I'm probably saying wrong. It's Balquhidder.
That was not the spelling I was expecting.
Balquhidder.
Balquhidder.
Apologies if I am getting it wrong. Near Loch Lomond is all you really need to know. And it was when he had this land, he really struck out more as a legitimate dealer in cattle.
Okay.
His business was pretty well established and he was growing and growing all the time.
Yep.
Everything was above board at this time. And he did this for about 10 years or so.
Fair play.
It was going really well. He had turned his back on illegal activity and he was going straight.
Should we refer to 10 years as an oxen?
An oxen? I think that's confusing.
Okay.
Because no one does that.
Yeah, that's like a fortnight. Oh, no, it's way down. It's like an oxen, no way.
No, I don't think so. Now, this is actually where we're going to take our spooky break for the episode.
Let me get settled. Okay.
Based on the feedback we got in our last episodes, you guys seem to prefer not having all the spooks at the end.
Mm-hmm. Spook as you go.
So this is going to be quite different because this is going to be our spooky break and we're not going to have any spooks at the end.
Oh my god. Well, we'll just settle in now. How exciting.
The reason that I settled on doing this episode on Rob Roy was because I actually started out doing research on the Drovers Inn.
Yes.
Which is on the shore of Loch Lomond. It's still there, you can still visit. It was built in 1705 to cater to the drovers who were travelling up and down the country.
That's a good business plan right there.
Right? And you can stay there now. It's on the West Highland Way. My sister stayed there. She did the West Highland Way last year. Super proud of her, by the way. She did the West Highland Way and the Great Glen Way all by herself.
Yep.
One immediately after the other.
It's fair play. She walked from just outside Glasgow to Inverness. It's a long way.
It's a long way. She struggled. But yeah, you can still go and stay there. It's really old. It looks very rustic. Very nice. And the Drovers Inn popped up on my radar because apparently it's full to the brim with ghosts.
Did you tell your sister that?
No, she was worried about bears. I didn't think she needed to worry about ghosts.
Worried about bears. Packed for the ghosts.
If you're interested in hearing our chat about India being scared of bears, you should join the Patreon because she sat down and had a chat with us over there.
We did have an extra episode featuring India. That's true.
But yeah, apparently the Drovers Inn is full of ghosts. They're everywhere all the time.
Interesting. Is it, I'm a skeptic for those who don't know, people who lie in their bed at night and hear this strange mooing out their windows?
Mooing. Ghost coo!
Yeah. Sound like someone shouting in the night. Well, kind of like a... But yeah, it's not a ghost, mate.
That was a pretty convincing cow noise.
Thank you.
I'm actually impressed.
The secret is to not make an M sound.
You don't actually say moo. So there's several ghost stories from the Drovers, and I thought I would include them in this episode since we've been talking about droving.
I think that makes sense.
I hope that's okay.
I'll allow it. Just this once.
So some of these stories have historical origins. Some of them are just unexplained. We don't really know what's happening. Guests who stay at the Drovers regularly report seeing and feeling lots of weird stuff. Orbs, banging, cold spots, apparitions, strange lights, strange figures popping up in photos that shouldn't be there.
Okay, all the good stuff.
That have then been checked with the staff that no one fitting that description works or was staying there at the time.
Interesting. Oh, that's Long Arm Jim. Don't worry about him.
So we know who that is. Don't worry about that. Cameras taking photos of people when they're asleep.
That's creepy.
The feeling of an icy, wet person lying in bed with you.
Oh.
Doors locking and unlocking by themselves. There's a whole smorgasbord of spooks.
Well, we started off fairly non-compelling with orbs, but that's some pretty creepy stuff by the end.
I did do that on purpose. I'll just draw you in.
Yeah. Draw me in with the rage, then hit me with the ghosts.
And then more rage. I found it difficult to verify a lot of stuff, which bothers me. It's why The Drovers isn't an episode by itself.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a lot of concrete information to attribute to a lot of this stuff. Another story I saw, which I can't verify, is that the ashes of a regular at the bar of the Drovers is behind the bar.
Ooh.
In tribute to him.
As in, like, in its urn,
Yeah.
kept behind the bar.
Yep.
Oh, I would believe it. Creepy. Kind of nice, I guess.
If it's where he was happiest, I kind of get it.
Yeah.
I would be a bit perturbed, but it's a talking point.
Yeah. Is that a whiskey? No, that's an urn.
How much? It's not really the problem. Now, before I get into the ghost stories themselves, stop playing with your shoes.
Yeah, sorry. I also thought of a joke. You won't find a whiskey smokier.
Oh, Kieran, that is bleak. Jesus. H. Roosevelt Christ.
Please continue.
Oh,
if you can.
I don't know if I can. Before I get into the ghost stories properly, the banging that people have heard is actually quite funny.
Oh, yeah?
Guests who were staying at the inn got really annoyed at the amorous couple who were staying in the room next to theirs. They could not sleep past all of the knocking and banging on the wall that divided their room from the next. And it was so loud, they actually thought there were more than 2 people in the room. And they were very upset about the whole thing.
All right.
But when they checked with the staff to complain about all of this noise that kept them up all night, they learned that not only was no one booked into that room that night, there was no one else booked onto that side of the building.
Oh, creepy.
So they were completely alone.
That's off-putting, isn't it? Oh, no.
But I thought their theory was quite funny.
Yes, I like
how
that.
upset they got about all of this passionate lovemaking.
In a group setting.
Yes, sharing's caring. But yet no one else was staying on that side of the inn.
Well, that's not good, is it?
You can imagine the feeling of just your stomach dropping like a stone. And just, I would just be stuck completely just staring at them. Like, what do you mean?
Well, you'd be like, no, you don't understand. Like, I heard them in the room. Like, there was no one there. So, no, I heard them. Well, there wasn't. Maybe it was the staff members off for a jaunt. I'm like, oh shit, busted. No, there's no one staying over there. It must have been a ghost.
Good cover. Not that kind of podcast. I've left a note to myself, because when I was writing the script, I didn't have the balls to use it, but I came up with the very cringy term, spooky nookie. So I wrote it down because I was very proud of myself, but I didn't have the balls to just write it in and then say it.
Oh my god. Well, there's a thought. Yeah, maybe there was a group activity happening, but it was ghosts who were happening with it.
Maybe. Love is love.
Love is love.
I've heard some refer to it as spooky nookie.
I've heard that as well, actually. Spooky nookie. Superb.
Someone really cool said it. I don't know who.
Yeah.
Anyway, the oldest ghost story from the Drovers claims that in 1792, a family froze to death while trying to make their way to the safety of the Drovers Inn.
Oh, that's a shame.
They'd been cleared from their home for sheep, victims of the clearances.
Even more of shame.
So they were heading south because the Highland clearances, they happened usually in the north. Journeying through the bitter winter cold, trying to find somewhere to go. They knew about the Drovers. They knew roughly where it was. They tried to find it. They'd walked miles and miles, but the conditions were really bad that winter. Super snowy, can't see anything, really dark, really wild. And they just couldn't find the inn. They couldn't make their way there. Since then, lots of people have reported seeing this ghostly family. They're usually described as a couple with children, just wandering around the Drovers.
Oh.
But they're just searching for what they couldn't find.
It's always so sad, isn't it?
It's a particularly sad one, this one. Some guests have reported seeing them in their room at night.
Oh.
The whole family.
That'd be awful. Oh my god.
On the Drovers website, now this is on their website. I want it to be known it would be in their interest for there to be ghosts at this place. This story comes from their website. They report that, quote, the young family were standing shivering at the foot of these guests' bed, their breath visible in the now freezing air. The young boy was waving up to the couple as if he was happy to have finally found what they were searching for, unquote.
That's grim.
You know what gets me?
What?
The breath in the air.
Yeah. Oh no.
Because that's so specific.
You can see it. You can picture it. That's grim. No, thank you.
Right? Worst nightmare. Next, I have the story of a little girl ghost.
Always creepy.
If stories about little girl ghosts bothers you for the obvious reasons, you might want to skip ahead. This story concerns the unfortunate death of an unnamed little girl who apparently drowned in the nearby River Falloch. The story says she was playing with her doll in the water, but the weather had been really bad in the run up to this happening. The river had swollen and she just got swept away because she was only wee.
Oh no.
The search party that got sent out to find her eventually discovered what happened. They found her body and they took her body back to the Drovers Inn. They apparently rested her on the bed in what is now the infamous room 6 of the inn. You can probably guess what happens now, given the setup.
Yep.
Guest of room 6 reports seeing this little girl at night when there's no way a child could be in their room.
Oh, God.
And this is also the reason people have felt a cold, wet person in their bed.
Oh, no.
And people attribute the experience to her.
Oh, God. Awful.
Isn't it horrible?
It's horrible.
What's weird is some people, according to the Drovers Inn website, have even reported seeing the little girl's doll.
That's creepier.
Not just her.
Yeah.
And I have so many questions, but none of them were answered. Is it a ghost doll? Is it a real doll? Does it walk around by itself? Or do they just find it lying in places?
Yeah. Have they found a doll to pick up?
Like, is it a physical thing? Or is it the ghost of a doll? Does it move around? Does it speak?
These are the answers we need. I talk a lot about ghost logic across the episodes of like what rules apply in the ghost universe.
We talk about this a lot in our Spook or Spoof series over on Patreon, actually.
Oh, yes, we do.
That's where we talk about it the most. We have a whole like cinematic universe of ghost logic happening over there.
Yeah, because you have to pick a logic and stick to it.
Well, where does this fit? Is it
a
possessed physical doll?
Because when you see a ghost, they're often wearing clothes. So that implies that clothes can have a ghost form. Ergo, why wouldn't a doll be able to have a ghost form?
But maybe it has nothing to do with the object. Maybe it's the connection that person has to this thing. So it's actually just still them.
Well, that's just it. Interesting.
I have lots of questions.
There's a lot of questions to be answered.
I don't know if I've ever heard of that happening.
No, that's an unusual one. I was just thinking you'd potentially be shit out of luck if we stayed there, because I sometimes get night sweats, so you might wake up absolutely freaking out because there's a cold, wet being in your bed, but it's just me.
I don't know, I'm pretty used to it.
But in that setting...
Even then, I'm pretty used to it.
Yeah, that's true.
I just ignore you.
Big
push you further away.
Sweaty mess beside you. Not because of a group amorous activity.
Now, on the Drovers Inn, they talk about the doll. Apparently the doll has the name Annabelle, which I have issues with, because there's a very famous haunted doll called Annabelle.
That seems opportunistic.
But apparently she's been, quote, searching for her owner, who she was sadly never reunited with.
The doll? Interesting. No, I'm Drovers out of this story.
But think about it. Think about how strange that would be, because if the story is true, I'm not saying it is because I couldn't confirm, this poor little girl has been swept down the river. She's not going to still have the doll.
No.
So the fact that people have seen a doll is strange.
Yeah, but it's not fucking Ghost Toy Story over here.
It might be. You don't know.
Like, it would be one thing for a doll to be... You see a doll searching for something, but to see a ghost doll searching for something, that's a step too far for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spoof.
But
yeah, on the website, they say this very casually with no follow-up. And left me with so many questions. I want to know.
See, that's how they get you. Oh, you come and stay and we'll answer your questions.
I want to know.
Then you get them, they're like, dunno, mate.
Now, the reason I bring up the Drovers in this episode is because one of the ghost stories actually concerns a drover.
Okay.
Which we've been talking about. Which is why I thought it would be okay to kind of mishmash Rob Roy and the Drovers together.
I like it.
He was staying at the inn while he was moving his cattle. He was called Angus.
It's a good name for a burly Bjorn-esque figure.
Kieran says that because that's my dad's name.
And other reasons. It's just a good Scottish name. No comment on your dad.
I don't know, you call my dad bulky.
No comment. They want to do that live? No.
Angus stayed at the inn, like I said. Seemed to really enjoy it because he took full advantage of their bar.
Very nice. Wait, he's not from Aberdeen, is he? Aberdeen Angus.
No! I mean, he might have been, I don't know. We can say that he is.
Yeah, okay. So Aberdeen Angus is draining the bar.
Yes, he's taking full advantage of the facilities.
Mm-hmm.
He was a little worse for wear when he came to the next morning. A little tender.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe been on it a little bit too hard. But he discovered that someone had made off with his cattle while he was drunk.
Not good.
Big uh-oh. Turns out men from a rival clan had kind of kept to themselves while they were also staying at the Drovers, but had watched Angus as he was getting more and more drunk.
Yep.
Listening to everything he's saying, they knew who he was. So hatched their plan to take advantage of his inebriated state.
Mm-hmm.
Angus was pissed. That works on 2 levels. He figured out pretty quickly who had stolen the cattle, but there wasn't really much he could do about it.
Yeah.
Because he learned after the fact who was there that night and who had left swiftly that morning.
Yes.
Angus was also up shit creek because with the cattle gone, he had none to sell.
Well, there's a lot of people to answer to.
And they weren't his cattle.
Mm.
He was moving them for his clan chief. And now he was really scared about having to go back north and tell him what happened on his watch.
While he was drunk.
While he was drunk.
That's not good.
Now, it turns out Angus was completely right to be scared. He returned.
Mm-hmm.
He owned up to what he had done, said that the cattle had been stolen away, along with any chance of the chief making money on all of his cattle.
Yeah.
Remember, the markets weren't there all the time, so you had to get there at the right time or miss your chance completely.
Yep.
The chief murdered Angus's whole family.
Oh my god.
And the woman he was in love with.
Oh, that seems a bit excessive.
Very Shakespearean.
That is very Shakespearean. Wow. That's a bit much.
That's what I thought. Excessive.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to get your cows back.
No. Maybe he felt better. But who knows if it even did that? Probably not.
Probably not. Ooh.
Angus was also banished from the clan lands, so he wasn't allowed to go home anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent his time wandering from place to place, so he no longer had a home. Always scheming in his head about how he was going to enact his revenge on the men from the rival clan who had stolen the cattle.
Yeah.
If the chance ever presented itself. Obsessing over it, thinking about it all the time.
Yep.
Because that's all he had left.
Well, yeah. If you're going to crush your enemies, you have to crush them absolutely. Otherwise, they come back to get you. It's one of the 48 laws of power, the book I read.
It's also a Taylor Swift lyric.
Is it?
If you shoot at the devil, don't miss.
Yeah. Because you just sow the seed for revenge, giving someone a very strong reason to hate you.
Yeah. The chance did eventually come for Angus.
Uh-huh.
And it was when he returned to the Drovers Inn.
Oh, shit.
When he arrived to stay there on his wanders, he saw, to his complete disbelief, that the men who had stolen his cattle were also staying there.
Motherfuckers.
And he was completely prepared to take his revenge on them. Completely ready. Because he'd lost everything.
Yeah.
But he didn't realise that they had spotted him first.
Oh, no.
And they were ready for him.
Oh.
When night fell, they attacked Angus and ended up murdering him.
Oh.
This next bit is gory. You've been warned. If you want to skip ahead, then do. The story goes that they hanged him from a nearby tree and then bled him like you do with cattle.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's just unnecessarily cruel.
Just like the ones they'd stolen.
Can't claim self-defense on that one.
No. Very brutal, very rough.
Mm-hmm.
If you skipped ahead, you can come back now.
Hi.
So now Angus is reportedly one of the ghosts that haunts the Drovers.
Well, if through ghost logic, ghosts are created through a very strong, emotional response,
this would be it.
That would be it.
He would be a ghost, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so burpy tonight. He's been seen wandering around, much the same as the family, but people have heard really savage screams and howls of rage that are supposedly him.
Yeah.
Which would be fucking terrible.
That would be awful, wouldn't it? Just awful.
Imagine hearing that. Because you would know that when you heard it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like a very spooky place, the Drovers. The look of it does nothing to negate that reputation because it's very old.
Mm-hmm.
Still has lots of the original features of the building that went up in 1705.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense that you would walk in there and be like, ghosts. 100%.
Yep.
As far as I know, India didn't encounter any ghosts during her time there. She had a pretty quiet evening. I think she just fell dead asleep almost immediately.
I was about to say, far too exhausted to have any of that nonsense.
But she felt very vindicated because there was a stuffed bear in the inn.
Oh.
They have a taxidermy bear, and I'd given her grief for being scared of bears in Scotland.
Ah, I see.
So she sent me a photo at the time, like, there was one.
Meh, 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 meh. It's definitely something I would do.
But that is the spooky portion of our episode.
Ooh, wow. But we've got history to come.
Mm-hmm. So I'd change it up.
Yeah, I like it. Brutal.
Right? Very brutal.
Very brutal.
We're going back to Rob Roy's story now.
Yes.
Who's living on the shores of Loch Lomond, not far from the Drovers Inn.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a legitimate cattle dealer for about a decade, turning his back on his thieving ways. Rob was very ambitious his whole life. He wasn't resting on his laurels, even though he was going straight. He went to the Duke of Montrose, who's a man called James Graham, and he was a court bigwig who had lots of important titles and jobs and things, which we don't really need to get into.
Are you a bigwig? Like a court bigwig? Because people in court wear big wigs.
Maybe. Interesting.
Oh my god.
That's your homework. You're going to have to look into it for next episode.
Anyway, I'll put it down for the blether. Big wigs.
You're going to have no idea what you mean when you look at that later.
That's part of the fun.
Would you like to tell the people what the blether is?
After the episode is over, me and Eilidh head over to the blether on Patreon, where we kind of follow tangents we left behind here, discuss the episode, go a little deeper in some of the stories.
If Kieran has questions, that's usually his time.
Yeah, if I have super unrelated questions like that, we answer them over on the blether on patreon.com/generallyspooky. Link below.
That was very succinct.
Thank you.
So, Duke of Montrose. Rob Roy goes to him because he wants to ask him for a loan. He has lots of money, as you'd expect, Montrose. He was Lord High Admiral of Scotland. He was Secretary of State, Lord President of the Privy Council, Keeper of the Privy Seal over the course of his life. Very influential, powerful, wealthy.
Yes. So many big, boring titles.
Yeah. Which is why we're not getting into it. You just need to know he was powerful and had money.
Yeah.
Rob asked him for £1,000, which he could use to buy more cattle and then sell them on for a profit after improving their condition, fattening them up.
Yep.
All of that.
Double it in a year. See? Best investment you ever made. See?
Yeah. Cut your own throat, Dibbler.
Yep.
Rob didn't see it that way. This is a genuine business deal he's proposing. He was looking for an investor so that he could expand his business. But he needed money to do that.
I like it.
And Montrose agreed because he understood how lucrative this deal could be because there's lots of money in cows.
Isn't there?
I used an inflation calculator I found online, so could be wrong. But I think £1,000 back then in the early 1700s would be equal to about £156,000 today.
Oh, damn.
So it's a major investment.
Yeah.
This is a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Just to give you a better idea of the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the money that Rob eventually got came from more people than just Montrose.
Oh, yeah.
Several different businessmen all chipped in to fund Rob's new venture.
Yes.
But Montrose put in the most. So he had the most to lose if something went wrong.
Mm-hmm. Might something be about to go wrong?
Your nose scrunch suggests you know that that is in fact the case.
Maybe.
Rob wasn't just a drover by this point anymore. He employed men who drove for him. His chief drover was a man called Duncan MacDonald, who was his trusted man. He was his right-hand man.
Yep.
And Duncan MacDonald was trusted with the letters of credit from Montrose and the other men who had promised Rob the money. They didn't have the cash. You just had this letter of credit, kind of like a check.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. There must be some sort of paper. It's not just a sack of gold, is it?
No, and it's referred to as a letter of credit. And I believe that this money was to be used to purchase the cattle. But Duncan MacDonald never bought the cattle once he got the letters of credit.
Uh-oh.
Duncan MacDonald was never seen again.
He effed off, didn't he?
He bailed.
Oh, no.
And he stole the money.
Man could do well on £1,000 in 16 something.
1711.
Exactly.
1710. Yeah, he stole it. That would have set him up for life.
Ooh, well, it's leaving Rob in a tricky position, isn't it?
Leaves him completely in the lurch
Yeah.
for £1,000 that he had no way of paying back.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't pay back the original amount. He couldn't deliver on the profits that were promised as part of the deal.
No.
He's in a lot of trouble.
Not good.
So what are you doing, Kieran, if you're in Rob's shoes? How are you handling this?
Whew. One night of absolute panic, just to get it out the way on one go.
The night sweats that you were talking about.
Yep, you do. You do all of them at once to get it out the way. And then you steal yourself some cows.
Interesting.
Steal £1,000 worth of cows to then still do the deal and recoup and then just pretend nothing happened.
So you enter a life of crime.
Enter back into a life of crime. Yes.
Even though you've been trying to get away from it.
Yep.
Interesting.
They forced my hand, Eilidh. I had to.
Interesting. Well, Rob stood firmer than I would have managed.
Mm-hmm.
I have no illusions about that at all. Because he was adamant that he hadn't done anything wrong.
Okay.
He hadn't stolen the money.
Mm-hmm.
It was Duncan MacDonald. So he shouldn't be held responsible for what he had done.
Good for him.
It wasn't his fault.
Yep.
And he wasn't just sitting back, like letting it happen. He was trying to hunt Duncan down.
Yeah.
He had men all over the place trying to bring him back and recover the money. But he was never found.
Whoa. You could disappear pretty well with that kind of money.
Especially at this time.
Yeah. Whew.
So Rob was declared bankrupt.
Ah. That makes sense.
He had nothing.
Yep.
But he was kept on the hook for the loan.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
They didn't take the same view that it wasn't his fault and he had nothing to do with it. He still had to pay back the money.
That's happened with the guy who organised the fire festival.
Yeah.
Remember that crazy documentary?
Yeah.
He's now out of jail and the original investors are like, you still owe me. He's like, okay, I'll try and get something with that then. Anyway, still happening 300 years later.
Pardon me. Unfortunately though, things just kind of escalate from here. They don't get better.
Oh no.
Because Rob was declared bankrupt. Mm-hmm. They're not letting him off the loan. He refused to answer a summons demanding that he repay the money and face the debt. This is a summons from the court.
Yes. Ah, I see. It's probably pay the money or go to jail.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because debtors' prisons were a thing.
Oh, of course.
He's in pretty dire straits because he has now refused this summons. So he was branded an outlaw in 1713.
Oh no. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Rob Roy I'm familiar with.
This is what you're here for.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you probably know Rob Roy for. Him being an outlaw.
Yeah.
His story is pretty well known, but now you know why he was an outlaw.
Ah, yeah. Which is odd because I feel he was set up to be an outlaw in the beginning. You know, when he started stealing cows, that was him setting up as an outlaw.
No. It was just blackmail.
Just a bit of blackmail.
Well, it was different. It was seen as a completely different thing. What he was doing at that time, I don't know if I have it later in my script, but he was basically the antithesis to the Black Watch. He had his own watch. That's what he was doing.
That's crazy.
And it was seen as a completely different thing to just being an outlaw.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused because one account I read gives a different version of the story so far. It says that the deal was made. Like I said, but in 1712, the cattle market completely bombed.
Oh.
So they weren't selling for the good prices they had been.
Uh-huh.
But Rob was already in the deal. So he stole the money himself, and that's why it went missing.
Interesting.
Because he knew he wasn't going to make the same profit.
Mm-hmm. Something drove the prices down.
I even read that in 1712 he was, quote, accused of fraudulent bankruptcy. And in 1715 he was to be found trailing in the wake of the rebel army of the deposed Stuarts at Sheriffmuir, waiting patiently for any booty that he could lay his hands on.
Oh my God.
Unquote.
Oh.
Which is rough.
That is rough.
And I'm not sure about this version because Rob and his family always supported the Stuarts.
Yeah.
But this exists.
You never know. But to be a scavenger behind them, that's That's insulting, isn't it?
Looting the dead.
Mm,
It's not a good look.
no.
It's not even good when you do it in games. I'm always self-aware.
Forever guilty.
Mm-hmm. But I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yes.
Because these different versions are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than it just being one-sided.
Yeah, I like it.
But Rob and the McGregors always supported the Stuarts, so unless he went against that, this seems unlikely.
Seems unlikely, but you never know.
Now, the effects that Rob's status as an outlaw had on him were pretty severe.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had an impact on his family.
Of course.
Because they are now the family of the outlaw.
Yes.
They were evicted from their home by the Duke of Montrose.
Mm-hmm.
Because he had seized Rob's land in lieu of the money being paid.
Yeah.
To try and recoup the debt.
Yep.
Recoup the debt?
I think so.
That might not be right, I'm not sure. Now, there are differing accounts of what happened to Marie and their sons when they were evicted. Lots of them are pretty horrible. But it seems that their home at Inversnaid was burned down once they were dragged out. And the family were just left to suffer in the cold. They were just left there.
Ooh. Seems impractical. If you're trying to recover money, like take the house and sell the house. It's more absolute and more of a statement if you burn it down, though, isn't it?
I think so. I think that's more the point. And then the family suffers.
Yeah.
I think that was more what they were going for.
That makes sense.
And they can't return.
Yes.
This all completely enraged Rob, as you'd expect, along with the various other reports of things that happened. He was not impressed at how Montrose had treated his family. Over money, of all things.
I know.
Rob, quote, waged a blood feud against the Duke, unquote.
He sounds like a formidable figure as well.
Yes, and now he wants revenge.
Yeah.
It's not just that he feels he's been wronged over this debt that he can't do anything about. Now he's gone after his family.
My family.
Right? Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
So, Rob started raiding and thieving across Montrose's land. To make a living. And to take his revenge on the Duke.
Twofer.
Can support myself and really get at this guy who's so focused on money.
It's a good deal. I do like that.
He stole his cattle, which Rob had lots of experience in. But actually went further in his outlawing. He would go around Montrose's tenants who lived on his land, and he would tell them that he was there on Montrose's behalf.
Oh, shit.
And they would pay their rent to him.
Oh, that's sneaky.
And it would be later that Montrose's men would show up looking for the rent on behalf of Montrose, and they discovered that the rent had already been paid. The tenants had no more to pay. There was nothing. Rob had taken it.
Well, rents were usually pretty steep, so you couldn't really pay them twice.
Well, I think they were usually taken yearly.
Oh, yeah.
That was how it worked. So if they were gone, they were gone.
Yep.
And Rob is sitting pretty while pretending to be on Montrose's side.
Oh.
You know, something about that just made me cackle. I thought it was so devious.
So confident.
Going after your enemy like that.
Yeah, yeah.
A man called Graham of Killearn was Montrose's factor, I believe. And the factor was the guy who basically ran a chief's estate.
Yes.
To give it a very simple explanation. And Rob supposedly hated him just as much as he hated Montrose.
Excuse me.
Because in one version of events, Killearn attacked Marie, who was Rob's wife.
Oh, okay.
So because of this, Rob hated him as much as he hated Montrose.
Can't be doing that.
There's a story about Rob encountering Killearn after this attack had taken place. And you can probably imagine how concerned Killearn should have been meeting Rob in the wild.
Yes.
After what he had supposedly done.
Yep.
Rob and his men captured Killearn and took him out to an island in the middle of Loch Katrine, which is a loch just north of Loch Lomond.
Yep.
I'd imagine that Killearn was shitting himself.
Yeah.
But Rob just left him on the island with no way of getting off again.
Oh.
And then sent a ransom to Montrose that he would have to pay to get his factor back.
Yeah,
Otherwise, Rob was going to kill him.
It's effective.
Tried and tested.
Tried and tested.
Killearn had to wait a whole week on that island.
Oh, that's a long time.
And then Rob came back and told Killearn that Montrose had chosen not to pay the ransom.
So did he die?
No.
Oh.
Rob didn't kill him.
Oh, well.
But he told him that Montrose hadn't paid the ransom, that he had just let him die. He let him go, but told him to, quote, never collect rent on the land that had originally belonged to the McGregors again,
Damn.
unquote. Because remember, Montrose had taken Rob's land.
Yes.
So I feel like this was quite a generous request, because he's not going further and taking what was never his.
Nope. It's just leave mine alone.
Mm-hmm. But he didn't kill him.
Ah, see, that's how you become a legend. That, like, act of kindness like that.
That and dead men tell no tales.
Well, that too. And it's got that little bit of, fair enough, it's enough, just leave me alone. Oh, fair enough.
But even if the story isn't true, the island on Loch Katrine is called Factor's Island.
Amazing.
After this story.
Yeah. Superb.
Burn me. So after this, Killearn had to go back to Montrose knowing that he had chosen to kill him.
No. It's sowing the seed of doubt. It's almost more powerful than if he killed him.
It's not even doubt. There is no doubt.
Well, yeah.
He left him to die.
Oh, hey, bet you didn't think you'd see me again, bub. Oh, great. You just go back to work then.
Well, that's great. Not only was Rob thwarting Montrose at every turn, stealing all his shit, generally raising mayhem.
Yep.
Turning himself into a very painful thorn in his side.
Mm-hmm.
He was actually working with Montrose's enemies at the same time.
Oh, shit.
They were helping him in what he was doing.
That would be beneficial.
Because your enemy's enemy is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And all that good business. The Duke of Argyll really didn't get along with the Duke of Montrose.
Okay.
Because these are too many with more money and power than makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like each other. And I think their lands bordered each other, which usually leads to problems.
Yep.
Argyll, which are the Campbells, if you remember, we talked about them earlier.
Yep.
Argyll decided to help Rob because it would hurt Montrose.
Very good.
He offered him refuge, somewhere safe to base his operations of thieving, in return for the protection of Rob and his men.
Uh-huh. Wow. Oh, I see. So he wants Rob to keep away the Montroses.
That, and to not attack Argyll land.
Ah, yes.
Property. Protect my stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just take from him, and I'll give you somewhere safe where you can be.
I like it. Clever.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It ensured that people who were living on Argyll's land didn't have their cattle stolen.
Smart.
Montrose was the only person who was being robbed.
Yeah. Being robbed?
Do you think that's where that comes from?
Better than being royed.
I mentioned Sheriff Muir earlier.
Yes.
We're getting to this again now.
Okay.
In 1715, there was a Jacobite rising.
I was about to say that. Before you
No,
said
you
that,
weren't.
I was about to say that.
No, you weren't. Bullshit.
I was about to say that with 40% confidence.
No, you weren't. I mentioned that Rob and his family had always supported the Stuarts, and they did during this rising too. He called up his men to support the Stuarts, but didn't actually fight at the battle itself. He and his men were raiding and thieving, I believe in the name of the Stuarts.
Okay.
So he was raiding government forces.
Ah, yes.
Stealing their supplies and stuff, which is why I'm iffy about the theory that he was going after the Stuart army.
Yeah.
And robbing as he went. I don't know. I don't know.
Hard to say.
Despite not fighting at Sheriff Muir, Rob was charged with high treason.
Oh, shit.
For rebelling against the Hanoverian King George I. Bit dodgy.
Presumably Montrose was a supporter.
Yeah.
Of him. So it's a bit of a reach.
But it's a bit dodgy if he's charged on a technicality because they just know he's a Jacobite.
Yeah.
Even though he wasn't there.
It's not good.
Oh, we just know that he does that and he believes this. Iffy.
Thought police.
He had this charge of high treason, so now he's being actively hunted.
Yes.
By government forces. It's not just a problem with Montrose anymore, this is bigger. But the fact that the Duke of Argyll was on his side helped him a lot.
It would do, yep.
Because Argyll did a lot to use his influence to keep the dogs at bay.
Yes.
In the hunt for Rob. I can't remember who he was loyal to. I feel like Argyll was on the side of the government. Or nobody in particular. But I can't remember.
Well, it's a tricky game to play But I feel you can play the like, yeah, it's fine that you've got this warrant out, but you don't have to look too hard. Here, like, come with me, I'll help you out with these things and yada yada.
That, or going to the people hunting him saying, can't do it on my land.
That too.
It wouldn't have to be that direct. It's just, no, you're not doing that on land that I own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Duke of Argyll certainly had enough influence to do that. He was one of the major landowners.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you think he'll need out?
I hope he needs out for anything.
He might settle. We could try. We're on page 22 of 26.
Nice.
So we're approaching the end. Oh, my bum.
My bum's getting sore too. Need to get a cushion for these.
They're not the comfiest of chairs. Dad, I want out. The dog has just entered the chat. There may be noises.
Chaos may ensue.
In 1716, Rob was given land at Glen Shira, which was north of Inverary Castle.
That's bold.
Which is the hub of Argyll power.
Yep.
It's not far from the shore of Loch Fyne.
Okay.
To give you an idea.
Mm-hmm.
He was being supported now by the second Duke of Argyll, John Campbell, who was the son of Rob's previous benefactor.
Yes.
He was given this land on the condition that Rob and his men hand over all their weapons.
A good idea.
That was Argyll's condition.
Uh-huh.
You can stay here, but I don't want you to be a threat.
Yeah.
He'd be left alone as long as he didn't cause any more problems.
Mm-hmm.
And stop making a nuisance of himself. Rob agreed to these terms. He thought this was all fair. He built himself a house at Glen Shira and was living there. But the Duke was apparently presented with a very large pile of rusty weapons that were pretty much unusable.
Yep. No, these are our weapons. Totally. It's nothing.
Oh, we're so poor.
Yeah.
We're so poor.
We are but humble farmers.
So they're still armed to the teeth.
Yeah.
But Rob is living at Glen Shira now. I suspect that his family were also there, although I couldn't confirm.
I like to assume so.
I assume they're there because it's a safe place.
Yeah.
Like they're under Argyll's protection, so it does make sense.
Mm-hmm.
In 1717, the Indemnity Act was passed.
Oh.
We might have talked about this before. Basically, King George wanted to try and bring the country together because there was a great deal of division at this time and he's trying to rule. So, in order to try and stop more risings from happening, this act pardoned those who fought on the side of the Jacobites in 1715 to try and smooth a way to peace.
Yeah.
So let bygones be bygones. Let's just put it all to bed. No more. However, the MacGregors were specifically excluded from the act.
Bygones be bygones, except for you.
Yep. They were some of the only people in the country who did not receive a pardon.
That's crazy. Troubling. Not good news for Roy. Yes, Rob, Mr. Roy.
This puts him in a bit of a pickle. You're right. Makes his life a lot harder. Because he's still wanted for his involvement in the Rising, even though everyone else can go about life normally. And he didn't fight at Sheriffmuir.
Yeah.
But he's still being hunted down. As well as other MacGregors.
I think Montrose had quite a lot of swing.
You think?
And he's just swinging it about.
Guys do that. At one point that year, Rob actually surrendered to the Duke of Montrose.
God damn.
Because he was out of options.
Yeah.
There's nothing else left to do. He was taken at Balkidder, which I might be saying wrong, but he actually managed to escape before he was taken to Stirling Castle.
Interesting.
He managed to get away.
Wait, did you say he gave himself up?
He did, but I think he was kind of forced to surrender.
Ah, I see.
It's a little iffy. I couldn't get a lot of the detail.
But he escaped again?
He escaped capture. Before he was taken to prison. And then later that year, the Duke of Atholl captured him, who was one of Montrose's allies. He captured him in Dunkeld, but he escaped again, even though he was being held prisoner at Logierate.
Crafty bastard.
And it's things like this that led to his romantic reputation.
Yeah.
Like escaping from capture and not going to prison, even though what he was doing wasn't necessarily right or good.
No.
But he became the underdog.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
And there's the romance of the thing. So he just managed to navigate 1717.
Damn. Okay, so he's still got his freedom. Just.
He's still going. In 1719, Rob fought in the Battle of Glen Shiel, again on the side of the Jacobites.
Okay.
Still supports the Stuarts. The Spanish supported the Jacobites in this rising,
Mm-hmm.
but they were ultimately defeated by government forces. This is the rising that ended with Spanish soldiers fortifying themselves in Eilidh Castle.
Oh!
Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that one. We have an episode on Eilidh Castle, for those interested.
Is it a two-parter or is it a one-er?
Honestly, couldn't tell you.
We talk a bit about that happening in the episode anyway, if you're interested.
My ancestral home.
But yeah, Rob fought at the Battle of Glen Shiel. He took part in this rising. He was injured in this battle, and he was 48 at the time.
Oh, damn.
So he's not a young man
No.
to be getting up and waging war.
To be hell-raising like that.
Moving ahead to 1725.
He's still going.
Rob was living at Balkidder. He'd moved a couple times over the past couple of years. He's now 54.
A fine age for 1725.
For an outlaw,
Yep.
that's ancient.
It's doing pretty good.
The Duke of Atholl died, one of Montrose's allies, like I said. The Duke of Argyll had been working for the past few years on reconciling Rob and Montrose.
Oh, okay.
To try and bring all of this to an end. And in 1725, Rob actually surrendered.
Okay.
Voluntarily.
Damn. Things must have been looking good.
He turned himself into General Wade, who was a major figure in the government army. He became Field Marshal. Big deal. He was responsible for lots of military roads and bridges being built in the Highlands.
Oh, okay.
So the face you pulled is because you've seen his name.
Ah, is that what it is?
General Wade's military road goes from Moy to Fort Augustus.
Ah, I see.
I think. I think. You'll have seen his name about. Rob turned himself in with a letter that he sent to General Wade. And this was a, quote, letter of submission to King George, unquote.
Okay.
And he was arrested, but for real this time.
Yeah. I kind of assumed, like, Montrose, he wouldn't just be like, okay, fine, just let him go. Like, he has to win. He has to win. He has to be like, I captured you. I'm amazing. Okay, I will pardon you because I'm amazing. That's how I think it's going to go.
I'm not sure how much Montrose had to do with this. I don't know if there were terms negotiated behind the scenes with Argyll.
Yeah.
But the charges against Rob were pretty severe. Like we've talked about. This was a big deal that he was arrested. He was actually taken down to Newgate Prison in London.
Oh, okay.
We've talked about that before.
Yeah. The Newgate Press Publishing. No.
Calendar. Now, I was very surprised learning this. But Rob wasn't sentenced to death.
See, that's why I think there was a little shady bitty going on.
Jiggery pokery. He was sentenced to transportation.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Which is still a big deal.
Yeah.
It was decided that he was going to be transported to Barbados. Now, I didn't know that about him.
No,
I didn't
know that either. Make him the Caribbean's problem. But he's ginger. He'll never survive.
That would be a genuine concern. You would fry to death.
Maybe that was the real punishment. Yeah.
You're going to burn. Now, what I didn't tell you is that in 1723, a couple years before he surrendered, a book called The Highland Rogue was published.
Okay.
And I can't actually tell you who wrote it.
What?
Because no one is sure.
Wow.
There was a theory that it was Daniel Defoe who wrote Robinson Crusoe. But I'm not sure that that's actually true because there's experts who've come out saying that it couldn't have been or wasn't him. So no one knows who wrote this book.
What about Thingy Scott, who has the big monument in Edinburgh?
Hold that thought.
Okay.
We'll get to him. I tried to get a physical copy of the Highland Rogue.
That would be fun.
But getting one was going to put me back about £300.
Ooh.
So I didn't do that.
I mean, that's fair.
I tried to get one so that I could read it.
Yeah.
I think I can read it online possibly, but couldn't get a physical copy. I also, in my research on this book, came across a whole series of books I didn't know existed, which are the Lords of the Highlands romance novels. Because book 7 in that series is called The Highland Rogue, so it popped up. It looks like a very different kind of book.
Probably not what you're looking for.
The Highland Rogue was published in 1723, and it was a fictionalized version of Rob Roy's story.
Oh, wow.
But it came out while he was still alive.
Yeah.
Before he surrendered.
Crazy.
It must be so weird.
That's wild.
That just came out about you. But as this fictional hero.
Yeah. Bizarre. Absolutely bizarre.
And it was really popular.
Yeah.
It painted Rob as the romantic rogue,
Mm-hmm.
the adventurer, the Scottish Robin Hood, and people loved it.
Everyone loves a lovable rogue.
They couldn't get enough. And this heightened Rob's fame and actually played a major part in what happened next in his real life.
Yep.
Rob was never transported to Barbados.
I feel like I would have known that for the story if that was true.
He never went.
Damn.
He actually received a full pardon from King George.
Wow.
For everything.
Yeah. Oh, people love stories.
Mm-hmm.
A good story will take you further than the truth.
Like he was too famous. He was too high profile.
That's amazing.
So he was a free man.
Yeah.
He was allowed to return home and live out the rest of his life in peace in Scotland.
Well, because he's not an outlaw anymore, because he would have been he's been tried and pardoned.
Yeah. Clear of high treason.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to get out of. Good effort.
And it was in large part because of this book and how it had inflated his reputation.
Yeah, how it coloured him and pictured him. Wowee. Incredible.
So he returned to Balkidder and lived as a free man.
Happily
quietly.
ever after.
He died in 1734 when he was 63.
Mm-hmm.
He's buried at Balkidder Old Kirk.
Oh, wow.
And you can still see the grave.
Yeah.
The McGregor family grave. His wife Marie is also buried there. And two of his sons, Col and Robert. I had a look. And part of the inscription on the stone for Rob and his family actually reads, McGregor despite them.
Love that.
Which is kind of badass.
Yeah. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Rob's sons were kind of notorious in their own right.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, his youngest son, Robin Oig. He became infamous because he was a murderer.
Oh, no.
A deserter and a kidnapper. He abducted a wealthy woman called Jean Kay and forced her into marriage so that he got all her money.
Well, that's not good.
He was a bad guy.
No. That's running with the family business in the worst possible way.
A bad guy. Awful person.
Dad, we gotta branch out. I'm thinking whole new avenues of crime.
Yeah, I'm just gonna kidnap. That's
Yep.
just what I'm gonna do now.
Wow.
Robert Louis Stevenson actually used him as inspiration for a character in his novel Kidnapped, who's also called Robin Oig.
Okay.
And the real Robin was eventually sentenced to death for what he'd done to his wife.
Yep. Well, that's fair, isn't it?
Yeah. Robin's older brother, James Moore, was a character in another one of Stevenson's novels called Katrina, which is the sequel to Kidnapped.
Oh. Well, there you go.
And I believe the real James escaped from prison and made his way to France, which is what happens in Stevenson's book.
Ah, I see. That was a fairly common Jacobite thing to do.
Yeah.
Escaping to France.
Well, because the French were sympathetic to the Jacobites. But you mentioned Sir Walter Scott.
Yes.
Without saying his name.
Thingy Scott.
Because he has the monument in Edinburgh. He wrote a novel called Rob Roy.
He must have, because he was the peak of romanticising Highland and Scottish life.
Yeah, it was one of the Waverley novels.
Ah.
He wrote, it's called Rob Roy. We have a copy in my office.
Well, there you go. It's one of the ones I've been studying. No further questions.
Yeah, he wrote a whole book about him.
Yeah.
About his story, but that came later. But at the risk of sounding cliche, the rest is history. Rob Roy became a legend. So famous that he has a cocktail.
I only like 5 minutes ago, I was like, oh wait, a Rob Roy's a cocktail.
Have you ever had a Rob Roy?
I don't know.
Would you like to hear what's in it?
Whiskey and orange juice? That's a screwdriver, I think.
Screwdriver is vodka and orange juice, I think.
Oh, that's a road to madness. What's a Rob Roy?
It's Scottish whiskey. Has to be Scottish whiskey. Red vermouth.
Okay.
Bitters. Ice. And a cherry.
Oh.
I think we should make them.
Yeah, that would be fun. It's kind of like a whiskey martini.
Yeah, kind of. Even the cocktail actually came about because there was an operetta written. It was like a musical performance written, and the composer was inspired by Rob Roy.
Cool.
So in New York, this cocktail was made to go with the operetta being performed.
Very cool.
So you would go and have your Rob Roy.
Well, there you go.
I can't remember. I think a Rob Roy is actually most like a Manhattan cocktail. Bear with me.
If it was...
Yeah, because a Manhattan is whiskey, sweet vermouth, bitters, and a maraschino cherry. But for Rob Roy, it has to be a Scottish whiskey.
Ah.
And red vermouth.
And red vermouth.
So it's more like a Manhattan than anything.
Okay. I love a whiskey cocktail, so I'd give that a go.
I think we should do it.
We just drank Rusty Nails, so it fits.
We did have whiskey for this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But that is the story of Rob Roy.
Wow. The man, the myth, the legend. I can now see why I didn't know if he was real or not.
Yeah.
If there's been fictionalized books written about him, that does lead to the confusion, doesn't it?
Yeah, it all kind of blends together.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because it was quite a long time ago, it all mixes and combines.
Yeah. That was so interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for delighting us with this tale, Eilidh.
You're so welcome.
Feel good to be back?
Yes.
Back in the swing of it now.
Now you won't be able to shut us up.
Anything to add before we close out?
I don't think so. We're going to jump over to Patreon.
Yes, we're
talk about the episode.
Going to go and host the Weeb Leather for our lovely patrons. Thank you to all of you. Otherwise, we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.